Okay, getting the angle just right. Okay, just stay. The struggles of an amateur YouTuber, guys. Oof. Okay, I think we're good. Assalamu everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be teaching you all how I was able to memorize the Quran without even opening the Mus'haf or the book. And I did this when I was like in elementary school, almost going into middle school. So I was like around ages 8 or 9. And basically my family had this thing. I don't know if you heard it before, but it's called a radio. And it looks like this. And I would literally like sit on the floor and I'd have to put a physical CD in, guys. Like, oh my gosh, I feel so old just saying it like this. SubhanAllah, what has the world gotten to nowadays? But anyways, I would put his Sheikh Mishari al-Fasi's CD. It was the complete Juz Amma, so the last or 30th part of the Quran. And I would start from Surah Nas and I would play the first ayah or the first verse like 10 times until I got comfortable with it. And then I move on to the second verse, play that like 10 times, and then until I got familiar with it. And then I'd replay the two together until I was comfortable, and then I'd move on to the third, and then repeat the process and so on. Now this sounds really tedious or it took a long time, but actually it was really easy, and I was able to memorize these surahs in just a couple of minutes. First of all, because all these surahs are super short, so it was easy anyway. And the second of all, I was really young at that time, so there has been like multiple studies and experiments showing how like young children are able to grasp all these languages at such a young age because their brains are developing and they're just absorbing all this knowledge. So I did have that advantage. As opposed to like when you get older, it gets more difficult for you to learn different languages. So, and I do like definitely relate to that now because it's definitely much more harder for me to memorize nowadays than it was like 10 years ago. As you got to the beginning of the juz, since I start from the back, I work my way towards the beginning. The surahs do get longer, so like Surah Abasa until Surah Naba. And obviously it did take a little bit longer because the surahs were longer, but the ayahs or the verses themselves were still really short, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But if someone were to reference like a random verse in one of the surahs, like in the middle, let's just take Surah Naba for example. If someone just said وَكَأْسًا دِهَاقًا, I wouldn't be able to tell them what came next. Like I would literally have to go all the way back from the beginning of the surah, recite it in my mind like until I got to the verse that they referenced, and only then was I able to tell them what came next. And this is really weird because like I figured like, oh, I should know what came next because I memorized the surah. But actually, like, in reality, I wasn't memorizing the verses themselves. I was actually memorizing the tone pattern or the specific melody of Sheikh Mishari al-Fasi because I was just listening. So I'm going to like try to explain myself. So when Sheikh Mishari al-Fasi on his CD, I would replay it over and over again and I would hear the exact way he recited that verse. So that's the way that I would recite it. And because I wasn't really familiar with different reciters and different qadis and maqamat and stuff like that, that's like for me in my mind it was like this is the way you're supposed to recite this verse, and that was it. So obviously like as time went on and I was learning, perfecting my tajweed and learning and from listening to different reciters and maqamat and getting familiar with that, branching out and exploring all these different recitations. Then as my experience grew, now I am more comfortable and I'm able to reference these ayahs and tell you exactly what surah it's from or what comes next. But that comes with time. Like back then I wasn't able to do that. So, I just want to like mention that because I thought it was interesting. Also, about a year ago actually, I wanted to do like a kind of personal experiment. I was interested to see if I was still able to memorize just by listening, because that was something I did back in the day, right? Like now I memorize mostly with just reading the words. It's easier for me because I'm better at reading Arabic now. But then once I memorize by reading, then I do go back and listen to experts so that I'm able to beautify my voice. So the memorizing part I do now is just by reading, and then the beautifying part by listening to others. So it's like a combination of the two. I do prefer reading just because you want to make sure that what you're reciting is correct and exact, because sometimes when you listen to other people, you're not sure if, it's a dhamma here that they pronounced, or if it's a shadda or a mad, or, a fatha or sukoon. You always want to make sure that whatever it is, you know exactly what you're saying so that you don't mess it up. But anyways, I was saying that like about a year ago, I tried to do the same thing just by listening, like without even looking at the words, with the first 10 ayahs of Surah Kahf. And I again listened to Sheikh Mashari al-Nafasi, and I was able to memorize it eventually. Yes, it took a lot longer because first of all, the verses are much longer than say Qul Huwallahu Ahad, but also I had to like break up each verse into different segments, smaller segments, so that I could, join them together and then be able to recite the whole thing from memory. So yes, it took longer, but it was still doable, so it's not like impossible or anything, but it was easier back in the day. Now, for me personally, it's easier to read from it, but maybe like if you are not very good at reading Arabic or your tajweed is not the best, listening to other people can help you with the recitation part, and I don't know, maybe it helps you much more than it helped me currently. So it might be a better alternative. Like, it just depends on the individual. Like, I can't just say that reading is the best way to do this for every single person. Like, everyone has their own way of learning and seeking knowledge, so there's really no right or wrong answer for this. I'm just like telling you my experience. So that's basically all. So yeah, I hope you guys found this video interesting, beneficial, and jazakallah khairan for watching, and until next time, assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah.